On today's segment of Biology's Impact in Our World, we will address the issue of ecosystems. Should we restore them? Should we redesign them? Who should ecosystems benefit? In the age of the Anthropocene, these questions are extremely pressing. First, let's define our terms. Ecosystems consist of populations, living creatures, and the environment, non-living things. These living and non-living things interact in processes such as the food web, where producers, usually plants, act as the food for the primary consumers, who are herbivores. Those primary consumers become food for the carnivorous secondary consumers. There are a variety of kinds of ecosystems, seen in the different biomes present around the globe: grasslands, forest, the tundra, and more. Many of these ecosystems do not look like their natural, original form due to things such as deforestation and climate change. But what do we do now with these exploited ecosystems? Attempt to restore them or try to redesign them? Designer ecosystems are created using specifically chosen species in order to amplify ecosystem services in an environmentally conscious, supportable way. These designer ecosystems do not harm conserved ecosystems in regions. Rather, they are created in new locations or in place of severely damaged ecosystems. These designer ecosystems take advantage of land that is often considered useless for other purposes, including areas exploited from the agricultural and mining industries. Other unconventional spaces where designer ecosystems can thrive include near railroad tracks and riverbanks. Let's talk to our first expert, Ben Kuga, Professor of Urban Ecology.
Thanks for having me on, Haley. As an urban ecologist, I approach this issue in an unconventional manner. But the fact is, it is impossible and undesirable to return back to a world with its original ecosystems. Too many ecosystems have already been exploited, and we've passed the point of no return. At this point, hardly any historical ecosystems remain fully intact. Restoring historical ecosystems would also have severe repercussions on human society. Reversing our agricultural practices would doom millions to starvation and destroy the economies of almost every nation in the world. Instead, we should focus on making our current urban ecosystems more sustainable and our non urban environments more productive and efficient using designer ecosystems. Scientists often talk about the downsides of human interaction on the ecosystem, but we cannot forget the immense benefits we have received as well. Intensive agriculture has fed the developing world for centuries, and as the third world grows, we will need even more food to prevent starvation. Urban regions also have increased human productivity and overall standard of living. These developments have, of course, had negative environmental side effects that were unanticipated and ignored by previous generations. But with better knowledge and technology today, new ecosystems can be designed to offset the negative aspects of these developments that can't be undone. It simply isn't possible to reverse the changes that have already happened, and it's impractical to think that processes like urbanization and agriculture can be undone. But there are things we can do going forward with designer ecosystems to make things more productive and efficient in the future.
Thanks, Ben. It definitely seems unreasonable and undesirable to restore ecosystems to their original structure. Now, let's hear the opinion of our next expert, Nick Carter, the chair of the International Committee on Designer Ecosystems.
Thanks, Haley. When we debate conservation efforts, we often talk of the conservation exploitation dilemma. Very simply, the idea behind the dilemma is that biodiversity is at odds with human development. When we conserve biodiversity, we limit our ability to satiate human needs, and when we extract resources to support human needs, we irrevocably destroy the natural world. The idea that such a trade-off is unavoidable, however, is unfounded. It is possible to redesign ecosystems such that they are both more lucrative and more ecologically diverse. In fact, threats to economic productivity are often ecological threats as well, so the game is not zero-sum. This is especially true in rural, undeveloped regions, where local populations are particularly reliant on ecosystem services for their daily well-being, which is why C.B. Barrett of the National Academy of Science finds that, quote, the decline of biodiversity may trap such ill-equipped populations in permanent poverty and trigger ecological and socioeconomic challenges to the whole society, end quote. Permanent poverty traps, wherever they may exist, are barriers to regional and global economic development. When we improve biodiversity, then, we increase the amount by which production occurs, and we decrease poverty on a global scale. One of the primary ways by which we might better equip ecosystems to better suit consumption and promote economic development, especially in rural areas, is to improve biodiversity. An additional focus on the marginal lands between naturally preserved areas and highly exploited areas might further achieve both goals simultaneously. To create what are known as designer ecosystems, which closely consider the biotic and abiotic needs of the land in these areas, benefits both the ecosystem and its usefulness to humans. For example, planting diverse perennial crops on agriculturally marginal lands facilitates ecological restorations, while also enhancing the energy production that can be extracted from these areas and alleviating the poor in doing so. Further, in the Netherlands, engineers built artificial lakes because freshwater sources were running low. These lakes attracted a diverse range of organisms and also offered a new source of freshwater for human consumption. So don't get trapped believing the trade-off. We can redesign ecosystems that better serve our needs by making them more biodiverse.
Thanks, Nick. Now let's turn to our final guest, environmental activist Naya Tadavarthy, for information about how redesigning ecosystems is actually beneficial to both humans and the rest of nature.
Thanks, Haley. As an environmental activist, I'd like to speak about how designing ecosystems actually helps us preserve the few ecosystems we do have left. Human economic activities need the biodiverse resources available in ecosystems. The world's increasing population means that every year, people will need to take more and more natural resources to make ends meet. Marginalized communities in developing countries especially depend on their quote-unquote natural surroundings for survival, gleaning water, food, medicine, and clothing from the environment. But exploitation from larger industrial and agricultural corporations can deplete ecosystems and destroy this way of life. Hence, designer ecosystems will provide humans with these necessary resources, so they need not exploit materials from conserved areas. Designers will plan ecosystems with the optimization of production in mind, creating a biodiverse array of species and managing abiotic factors such as nutrient levels in water, so that it will take less land to support more people. Therefore, these places will produce greater services and run a lower risk of overuse. Furthermore, in locations where ecosystems cannot serve a completely productive role due to environmental limitations, designer ecosystems can act as buffer zones between human activities and natural environments. Practices like wetland mitigation, stream channeling, or even sustainable earnage drainage systems, because cities are ecosystems too, can help filter pollution out of natural waterways. Designed ecosystems will even create spatial separation between exploited areas and so-called natural environments, helping to prevent land degradation and nutrient depletion near conserved areas. Again, I'd like to stress that sensible people are not advocating for replacing natural ecosystems with human-designed ones. Instead, we are using land that people have previously rendered useless through industrial activities, transportation infrastructure, or agricultural nutrient depletion to create whole new ecosystems of biodiverse species, protecting the natural world and improving human quality of life. Thanks, Haley. Back to you.
Thanks, Naya. It's clear that redesigning ecosystems is the only way to continue to support the human population, while also avoiding exploitation of the few remaining natural ecosystems. In the 2015 study, Designer Ecosystems, A Solution for the Conservation-Exploitation Dilemma, multiple scientists from universities around the world asserted that, quote, existing strategies for biological conservation remain insufficient to achieve a sustainable human-nature relationship. We need to devise novel strategies in a mutually inclusive way, which can support biological conservation and secure economic development of deprived populations, end quote. The only way to do this is by using designer ecosystems that fit in our modern world. We don't live in the world of the past. We must accept where our world is today and continue to improve it. Thanks for joining us.